I mean, the problem for Britain in that sort of global world as well is that the spying scandal that we saw this week kind of popping up, the stories about China's infiltration into our education sector, the stories about, China's, real, I suppose, hegemony, for want of a better word, over the rest of the world, is very plain for all to see, and nobody's quite sure how to deal with that.
No, that's right. I think the problem with China really was that from the 1990s, the hope was that by opening our economy to China, by bringing in, opening up our markets, that reforms of a non-economic type in the country would follow. And of course, that hasn't happened. And meanwhile, businesses have become very intertwined. In China, their operations have become very intertwined. It's Chinese influence that infiltrates all layers of the British economy, and it's so hard to unpick that. And we're so dependent on China in so many ways when it comes to exports and particularly imports. Some businesses benefiting from cheaper Chinese labour, for instance. And the government hasn't really set out its position on this. And clearly, as we've seen in the last few days, it's a thorny issue for the Conservative Party, which is split between, those who are more hawkish towards China and those who are more dovish. And Rishi Sunak, at the helm of the party, doesn't seem to have really picked a side. But ultimately, it's all very well talking about, well, previously it was decoupling from China, now it's de-risking from China. But in order to do so would be very economically damaging. So politicians are going to have to be honest with the public about that. And I think that that's why there's an unwillingness there. But ultimately, we just need to have something resembling a clear strategy on China as it becomes seemingly increasingly hostile towards us.
Yeah, well, exactly right. And as we saw today, we've got Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin meeting up in a kind of a strange, odd-looking summit in the far east of Russia. I don't think anybody's expecting anything really terrible to emerge from that, but it does show you that there are other international kind of powers that don't take any notice of the West, effectively.
Yes, I think that's reinforcing what you might call the axis of evil. Putin, Kim Jong-un forming this alliance, possibly doing so really to show China that it ought to go into a more formal partnership with those countries. Of course, China equivocated on your war in Ukraine. It's China, well, certainly it started this year to perhaps position itself as some kind of peace broker, but that hasn't progressed very far. But it'll be interesting actually to see what this alliance, the impact it has on Russia and the impact that it has on Vladimir Putin, because initially, I think superficially, it looks as though it's strengthening, bolstering his position. But actually, I wonder whether it's a relationship he will come to regret.